Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert Lani Diane Rich, and all I do is look at the big picture. The other day, I gave an inspirational speech to the telephone repairman.
And I'm film scholar and captive audience for your witless prattle, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Lies My Parents Told Me, the 17th episode of season 7. Lies My Parents Told Me aired on March 25th, 2003, and was written by David Fury and Drew Goddard and directed by David Fury.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that. And the three of us will teach those snobs and elitists with their falderall just what...
The three of us?
Yes. You, me, and Mother.
You want to bring your mom with us?
Yeah, you'll like her.
To eat, you mean? Let's go on patrol. In Lies My Parents Told Me, we open with Spike fighting Nikki Wood in a rain-drenched Central Park while a young Robin Wood watches from behind a bench. Spike runs off to give Nikki a second to tell young Robin that she needs to go, and she's going to leave him with her watcher, Crowley. Robin doesn't want to leave her, but she tells him she has to do this. The mission is what matters. Cut to the present moment where Robin fights vampires in an alley alongside Spike and Buffy. After it's over, Spike helps Robin up and gives him some advice.
Steak's your friend. Don't be afraid to use it.
The next day at school, Buffy goes into Robin's office and lets him know that shutting down the seal was successful, but the fight isn't over. Giles shows up, very distressed about all the computers in the library, and also that Buffy removed Spike's chip, and now they've got to deal with Spike's trigger. Giles brought back a magical what's-it from England that may help them disarm it, but who knows? It's all so confusing.
So he has a trigger, a soul, and a chip? Not anymore.
It was killing him, Giles.
The trigger.
No, the chip. The trigger's not active anymore.
Because the military gave him a soul.
Back at the house, they set up the magical de-triggering in the basement. They chain Spike to the wall, and Giles puts a magic stone worm into Spike's brain to reveal the root of the trigger's power. Spike's not sure it's working, but then he watches a memory of him reading his love poetry to his mother, which is a little weird, but she's clearly into it, so okay. She follows up her praise by coughing blood into a handkerchief. Spike wants to get the doctor, but she knows she's done for, so she tells him not to worry. He sits by her side, and she begins singing Spike's trigger song. Back in the basement, Spike vamps out and attacks, giving Dawn a good conk on the head, but then the magical stoneworm thingy pops out of his eyeball, and he's back to being regular deadly Spike. He tells everyone about his mother and about the song, and that's good enough for Buffy. Meanwhile, upstairs, the potentials fret about training with a triggered Spike. And why is he still alive again?
Don't waste your time down that road. Spike's got some sort of get-out-of-jail-free card that doesn't apply to the rest of us. I mean, he could slaughter 100 frat boys and... Forgiveness makes us human. Blah, 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 blah.
In the basement, while Buffy and Giles argue about unchaining Spike from the wall, Spike remembers being in his mother's house with Drew, talking of the three of them tearing a bloody swath through Europe.
You want to bring your mum with us?
At that moment, his mother walks into the living room telling Spike about how worried she's been at his disappearance. He tells his mother that he's become a vampire and he wants to make her one too, so they can be together forever.
It only hurts. For a moment.
Willow gets a call from Angels Camp in Los Angeles and tells Buffy she's going to need to take off for a couple of days. Buffy tells her to hurry back, then goes to unchain Spike despite Giles' objections. She angrily leads Spike upstairs, and Robin takes Giles aside and says that Spike is a problem. He tells Giles who he is and asks for Giles' help distracting Buffy while he kills Spike. Later that night, Giles goes patrolling with Buffy to train. Buffy isn't sure about leaving Spike with Robin, but Giles distracts her by telling her that her life is chaos, and clearly she's a hot mess without his guidance. You know, the kind of thing an abuser says to get control of his victim. But let's just skip past that, because for now, we're pretending that this is perfectly acceptable behavior from Giles. Back at Robin's, he leads Spike into his garage, which is lined with wooden crosses.
It's the hellmouth, Spike. You can never be too careful.
Robin goes to the cutest little old early aughts iMac you have ever seen, y'all, and cues up Spike's trigger song, which I'm guessing he got using some of that classic super fast 56K baud dial-up internet access with that brand new Safari browser, which took him straight to Napster, where a digital copy of the old folk ditty was just there, waiting to be pirated. Technology is fucking magic, y'all. Anyway, back to Robin's plan. Deliberately hitting Spike's trigger seems like a bit of a high-risk strategy, but I'm guessing Robin Wood didn't show up in Sunnydale to not take vengeance on his mother's brutal death, so no flag on the play. Robin takes off his shirt, suits up with some weapons and armor, tells Spike that he wants to kill the monster who took his mother away from him, and hits play in fucking iTunes.
There he is.
Spike flashes back to his mother, all effulgent in her vampire form. At first, he's excited about their future together, but it turns out she's kind of sick of having him hanging on to her apron strings. She wants to leave him, but not before mocking his poetry and trying to, have sex with him. As you do. We intercut with the memory of his mother's mockery and sexual abuse as Spike allows Robin to beat the shit out of him, shouting about how Spike killed his mother. Spike doesn't fight back. While Spike lies on the ground, barely breathing as he remembers his mother's sexual assault, Robin removes Nikki's coat off Spike's back and breaks part of a wooden cross off the wall. Meanwhile, while Buffy is distracted fighting a new vampire, Giles lectures Buffy about her approach to this fight and her defense of Spike, even though he may jeopardize their chances of winning. Back at Robin's, Spike relives the brutal memory of his mother as a vampire and stakes her. He wakes up and fights back, and once Robin is beat up enough to stay down for a bit, Spike says he was a vampire, Robin's mother was a slayer, and he's not sorry. He plays the song again and doesn't change.
Thanks, Doc. You killed me after all. I got my own free will now. I'm not under the First or anyone else's influences now. I just wanted you to know that. Before I kill you.
In the graveyard, Giles continues to lecture Buffy about Spike while she fights the vampire, and Buffy realizes what he's doing. She runs away from Giles to go save Spike and finds him putting Nikki Wood's coat back on as he leaves Robin's garage. He pushes the door open and reveals Robin crumpled against the wall, beaten but alive. Spike says he let him live because he killed Robin's mother, but next time he will kill him. Buffy goes to Robin and kindly tells him that she understands why he did what he did, but she's fighting a war and Spike's her strongest warrior. If Robin tries any of these shenanigans again, Spike will kill Robin. More importantly, she'll let him. She doesn't have time for vendettas. The mission is what matters. Back at home, Buffy checks in on a sleeping Dawn, and when she steps out into the hallway, Giles is there. He starts to talk, but she interrupts him to tell him that Spike is alive.
What I told you is still true. You need to learn...
No, I think you've taught me everything I need to know.
All right, Noelle, so here we are with Lies My Parents Told Me. We have lived through the doldrums of Season 7, Storyteller last week being this triumphant return to form, and here we are with Lies My Parents Told Me, and I gotta know, what do you think about this episode?
I love this episode. I love this episode so much, which is funny because my impression of this episode is men will literally write episodes of television like this instead of going to therapy, but there's something so great about it. And I don't know.
Yeah, I love this episode. I love the conflict with Robin, who loses none of his goodness through this turn. I like Buffy's conflict with Giles, even though I don't like that it turns on Giles being the new conflict vending machine, filling that role that they had Joyce in for a really long time. But I do like, the the difference in philosophy and vision of this fight from two people who deeply love and respect each other. If the way that Giles had handled it had been differently, I really, really would love this conflict between them. And I also love Willow going to Los Angeles. I mean, it's a tiny little point, and it has to do more with what's happening on Angel than it does anything else. But it means she's coming back with Faith. And now the Faith erasure stops because Faith is going to exist again in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I love it.
I love that we don't get much of our supporting cast in this episode, but what we do get is so fantastic. They are so completely themselves. I think Xander, Anya, and Andrew have one line each, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're just the epitome of who those characters are for the tiny moment that they're on
Forgiveness
screen.
is what makes us human. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I love all of that stuff. One of my favorite things about this episode is the relationship in this. In the episodic story here, we have an antagonist and a protagonist. We have Spike, who is our protagonist. He's just trying to, figure out what's going on and not be a danger anymore. And Robin, of course, wants to kill him. And I love this fight between them. I love all of this buildup because I'm with both Robin and Spike during that fight. Spike murdered Robin's mother when he was just a little boy, and Spike is a vampire, soul or not, and he has been killing people. Like, I don't think Robin's really out of line here. I mean, aside from not trusting Buffy, but he hasn't known Buffy that long. His mother and his loss are going to be more important to him at this point than Buffy or even necessarily this particular fight. At the same time, I'm also with Spike. He was a vampire. He can't change what he's done. He has changed what he will do. He went out and got a soul, which is, all he can do. He's not willingly killing or hurting anyone. He's just there to be part of this fight and to help out. And I think that some of the best antagonist-protagonist pairings you get is where we sympathize with and understand both sides of it. And I think they do that really, really well here. The only thing here I think that makes Spike win out over Robin is, there's the Delight armor, of course. We're not actually going to kill Spike. But it's that Robin is motivated by the past, which cannot be changed. And Spike is motivated by the future, which can. And we make a lot of commentary throughout the run of Buffy on vengeance and the moral splashback of vengeance. So even while you sympathize with Robin, you know that vengeance is a problem, And the thing is that the past is the past. You have to move on from it. Whatever regrettable things may have happened, even things you may have done, it's over. You have to let go and move on because there is no other choice. And I like the way that they address that with Spike. I like the fact that Spike isn't riddled with guilt over this. When he is walking out of that thing like a badass, taking the jacket back that belonged to Nikki Wood, but which he claims as his own. It's a really nice moment because he's not doubled over in apology. This happened. Yeah, it sucks, but it's what it was. He was a vampire. She was a slayer. That was how it worked. She knew what the deal was. And that was how the game was played. And he just kind of walks away with that. And I like it.
It's a really fascinating dynamic that the two of them have, and their relationship to each other in this episode is so fascinating because they're both dealing with similar sets of feelings, right? I think it's fascinating that the thing that makes both of these mothers so damaging to their sons is that they want more than motherhood.
Yeah, which is a crime.
Right? I know. It's so, it is so fascinating. These two dudes actually have a lot in common, but they have to punch each other about it instead of talking about it. Not that Robin would be super inclined to have a conversation with the man/demon who killed his mother when he was 4. But they both have a lot. They have a lot in common with their complicated feelings about their mothers. And isn't that interesting? I don't know.
It is really interesting. And I mean, Spike draws that direct correlation. He's like, unlike you, I had a mother who loved me.
Which is so cruel. It's so cruel, but it's also so Spike, because Spike is in so much denial about the Norman Bates type relationship he has with his own mother.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's going to put this on. See, I would argue that not that it's a contest, but that perhaps Nikki Wood loved her son more than. Do we know
Nikki Wood?
What do we do?
Nikki Wood, yeah. Nikki Wood had the nerve to have her own identity, her own mission aside from her son. And then we had Spike's mother, who was, while she was human, completely devoted to Spike, was completely all about him, would listen to that terrible music, terrible poetry, and just loved him. And her entire life was about him. And I find this because textually, what this episode is saying is that a mother with a mission is the bad mother.
Yeah.
And a mother who subsumes her entire identity to her children or child is the good mother. And I find that narrative, first of all, super prevalent culturally. This is an absolutely accepted. Mothers are supposed to sacrifice everything of themselves to their children. And having anything of themselves makes them immediately a bad, selfish, horrible mother. And I find it really interesting because that is an unquestioned idea in this episode.
Well, and what's interesting about Spike's mother too is that she doesn't have a choice. She's sick. So she tells us that she was housebound. So where the hell is she gonna go? There's not, she talks about him not having another woman in his life, but she doesn't seem to have anybody. Now, is that on purpose? Is this relationship as interesting and problematic as vampire Spike's mom leads us to believe? I'm inclined to think yes, but she didn't have for whatever else is going on there. She didn't have the ability, maybe physically, to go anywhere else or have any
separate
other life
from Spike.
Yeah. So
that wasn't an option for her.
That was not an option for her. So I don't know. I mean, there's also the fascinating conversation to be had about the separation of the vampire self and the human self, and Spike kind of dials that back for us. We've sort of, over the course of this series, kind of built up this understanding of vampires as being kind of
a complex mixture of who the person was, and yet this person, but without a soul to guide them. Although, again, the soul canon is very, very messy within the Buffyverse as well. So, the role of the soul in making somebody feel, the soul is basically the conscience, and I guess without that, you would just behave horribly no matter what. But he goes back to, that wasn't her, that was the demon, which I think is a little diluted. I think that's what he needs to believe in order to be able, but
so much
when
denial.
she comes back, she expresses, very cruelly, but she expresses a desire to have her own existence, have her own life that isn't completely about this kid who she's been stuck with, societally, because she has nowhere else to go. And we see that as evil, that she's like, I don't want my entire life to be about you. Now, yes, she is very cruel in the way that she expresses it. And of course, trying to, rape her son is also a whole other level of cruelty and evil. But overall, she's the good mother when her entire life is about this boy, and not when it's not. Do you think I want to go all over Europe with you? I finally have freedom, and you want me to waste it on you?
Yeah.
That is kind of an interesting idea. It's cruelly expressed, but at the same time, mothers are expected to sacrifice everything of themselves for the children, and that's just the rule, so the idea that she wants her own life without having to run around killing people with her kid, you know,
yeah, that she finally has a chance to, I don't know, go somewhere and do some stuff,
live. Exactly.
Yeah. So when Spike says, unlike you, I had a mother who loved me back, I think that is about hurting Robin and being in denial much more than about anything else. But
do you think it's textually though? Like, it feels to me like the text is accepting that as a legit read.
Oh, that the show agrees with Spike that Spike's mother loved him and that Nikki Wood did not love her son.
Nikki did not.
I think Nikki is fascinating to me.
Oh God, Nikki's awesome.
So there's that line she says when we see her talking to Robin when he's 4, and she says, I love you, but I've got a job to do. And it's that but that negates everything before it. So linguistically, she does. I mean, linguistically,
she is placing her job at odds with loving him.
Yeah.
But she cannot love him and do the job, that she has to choose one. Yeah.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that she doesn't love him. But I think the show is maybe trying to thread that needle a little bit.
Yeah.
And say that Nikki was wrong to do what she did. I don't know. But it is fascinating to me that with both of these characters, it's all about their mothers and their relationships with their mothers, or their I was gonna say stunted relationships with their mothers, that they just can't seem to get over that particular developmental stage, and the only way to do it is to punch and bite each other. There is something. Are there
no therapists in Sunnydale?
There's something very, very American masculinity about this to me.
Sure.
The only way that we can access our feelings as dudes is by hurting each other, and then making it into a competition about whose mother loved them more. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get it. I really do. But yeah, no, Nikki Wood, I think that first of all, placing this at odds, that, I love you, but. Yeah. I love you and is one thing, and I love you but is another. And the idea that she loved him, but she didn't love him enough. Like that there is that sense of that, as opposed to she loved her son and she had shit to do.
Oh my God, she had so much shit to do. She had so much shit to do. So the thing about this episode is I suddenly want to know everything there is to know about Nikki Wood.
Yeah.
She is fascinating to me. I think she's one of the most compelling characters that has ever popped up on the show. And we get so very little of her because she really exists just as this, I don't know, not psychological MacGuffin for Robin to be, I don't know, after, laying over Spike like a scrim so we can do this, my mommy loved me more than your mommy drama. But she's fascinating. We open with this scene of her fighting in the rain, of course, very dramatic, with her literal child right there. Good Lord. I'm watching this and I'm like, wait, okay. So did she have a baby before being called or after? What is a Slayer's pregnancy and childbirth experience like? Who is helping her besides her watcher? Because she's not getting paid to be a Slayer.
Wait, is her uterus super strength too? Could she just do one grunt and shoot that baby across the room?
I mean, if Slayers are super strong, right? The uterus is a
all
muscle.
Of their muscles, the uterus is a muscle. I'm just saying. Yeah.
I mean, is it a muscle? I mean, it has muscle.
It is a muscle. It's an organ. It's a muscle. It's a muscular organ.
I love that all of the healthcare professionals who may be listening are like, oh my God.
Are like, oh my God. Shut up. Yes. If anybody wants to send us all the reasons why we are completely wrong about this, by all means, we will read it on the show.
Tell me all about Slayer pregnancy. I want to know everything.
Exactly. Give me Slayer pregnancy.
Super strong and super good at healing. Oh my God, was that just like the most easy, pleasant, enjoyable pregnancy imaginable? God, I hope so. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so we have this young mother.
Yeah.
Who is the Slayer. And as we have established, right, Slayer, there's not like benefits that come with being a Slayer. Slayer is all drawbacks.
So she's got a kid. She's got to have a full-time job.
Yeah.
And she's got to kill everything.
She has a child to support. Did she also have a job? I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Crowley took care of them, I guess. The Watcher. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, but like, is she like, where is her health insurance? That child needs, doctor visits. And like, I'm just immediately in like, parenting mode with this young woman.
Right.
You know, not to go down that rabbit hole, but also she's a young Black mother, and that carries a huge weight in the world that, you know, she would not have to carry otherwise. Like, this woman is unbelievably complicated and in unbelievably complicated situations. And I'm like, what? Holy shit. Like, she has no choice but to take this child to work with her, work for which she is not getting paid. I don't know.
It's fascinating.
Amazing.
If you bring her back to the version of her that we saw in Fool for Love, right? That every Slayer has a death wish. At what point did all of this become just too much? I mean, was Spike right? Did she give up because she just didn't want to fight anymore? And if she did, can you blame her? I mean, can you blame her for being fucking tired?
Yeah. To be a single parent, a Black woman, and the Slayer,
like, not getting paid.
Fuck that noise so hard.
It is a fucking pile of shit to deal with, you know? Yeah.
So I did a quick, you know, Buffy fandom search because, you know, I am not a comic books reader of comic books. There's got to be a better way to say that. But in On Your Own Part 1, the 6th issue of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 9 comic book series, we get a little bit more information about Nikki. And honestly, I may have to check that out and read it, despite having a very hard time reading and following graphic novels, because a pregnant Slayer is Noelle catnip. And apparently in that story, we get a little bit more information about Nikki and what was going on with her. Apparently when she did her, you're the Slayer, you're 18, we're going to sedate you and make you fight a very dangerous vampire trial, she was pregnant already.
Yeah.
Which, you know, lovely. Yeah. But we don't get any of that here. We just see this young woman with her child out in the rain. And what I find so fascinating about Nikki in this episode, what we see in this episode, is that while Spike suggests that she loved her calling more than she loved her son, I don't think that's what we see. I mean, I've already talked about the I love you, but I have a job to do. To my eye, she is another working parent doing her absolute best in a terrible situation. Yeah. And the fact that we're going to try to spin that at all to make her some kind of villain is super, super problematic. Also, I don't know, Robin Wood should fucking know better. He was 4 years old.
Yeah.
He was 4. Your view of your parents when you're 4 is, I mean, by necessity, so intensely one direction. Like he could not possibly understand her life. He couldn't understand her as anything other than his mother, and he wouldn't be able to. He wouldn't have to. But as an adult, I feel like this is one of the gifts and secrets of adulthood, being able to take several steps back and go, okay, I didn't get what I needed when I was 4 or whatever. Or yes, my mother was killed when I was 4, but I can see with my very smart adult brain and adult perspective and regular therapy sessions that my mother was a human being working under intense, impossible circumstances. I don't know. I don't
think he's mad at his mother, though. He's mad at Spike for taking his mother, for murdering his mother. Like, that's where the focus seems to be for Robin. Spike is so saying this stuff about your mother didn't love you.
Yeah. But it's I don't know. It's so misdirected. Like, yes, this vampire took his mother away from him, but also, I don't know. Having said all that, I think I'm just irritated with Robin for not doing more of his own processing like a goddamn adult.
Right. Working through it with a therapist like an adult.
An adult. And absolutely that would be hugely traumatic to be not just in a room with Spike, but being expected to work with Spike.
Yeah.
In like a positive, yay, he's here, he's going to help the mission kind of vibe, when of course the mission is what ostensibly took Robin's mother away from him. I don't know. See, I love it. It's intensely complex and also annoying, but I love it.
But I love also, it's because Robin does this. Spike was not de-triggered by the magical stone worm. Spike was de-triggered by Robin doing this. This whole big fucking fight is therapy for both of them, right? It gets it all out, you know?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I love, like, Spike in this. I love Spike. He's so complicated. He's so interesting. But one of the things that I really love about him is how he doesn't feel guilty for things. Like, he feels shame, but not guilt. And, you know, the distinction, I believe I pull this from Brene Brown's work, is that guilt is feeling bad for what you do, and shame is feeling bad for what you are, for who you are. And I think that Spike has a lot of shame because he is a monster. He's not a man. And once he got his soul, he understood that even more than he did when he was, you know, just a vampire without a soul and had a chip. But he did what he did because he was a vampire. He understands that he didn't have control over that. He doesn't hold himself responsible for it. When he talks about who his mother is, you know, he says she was, you know, that was the demon talking, not her. At the same time, like, he knows from the experience of being a vampire that is who he is, that he is that guy. Like, you know, how does he splits his identity, the identity for his mom, but doesn't really for himself. And I think that is a whole complicated discussion as well that we don't have in this episode. But instead of beating himself up about what's done, what's in the past, he just decides to pick up and move forward and try not to be that thing anymore. And I find that really refreshing. Like, Angel was constantly brooding about the past, about what he's done, about how there is no redemption, but he keeps doing the right thing anyway, because what else are you going to do, right? You're here, you might as well. And I actually really like that. I mean, that line from Epiphany in Angel, if nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do. That is a line that has changed my entire life philosophically. Like, it is the linchpin of when I struggle, I go back to that idea. All that matters is what we do, you know? And so we have Angel and Spike kind of as two sides of the same coin. They are both about what you do now as opposed to what you did then, but they come at it from different angles. Angel doesn't let it go. Spike does. And for me, that's a nice contrast. Like, I don't want another Angel here. A different take on a vampire with a soul is really, really good. And for anyone who hasn't watched the Angel series, I really recommend recommend it. If you've tried and bounced off, I did a podcast called Still Dead with Dr. Kelly Jones, where we tell you which episodes you can skip and still get the basics of the story. There are a lot of bad episodes. There are a lot of skippers in there. But there is an episode in season 5 called Damages that is dark and terrifying and so great. So if you enjoy the Spike Angel consequences of a vampire with a soul thing, it is worth watching all of Angel for that episode alone, or at least the Watcher episodes. The skippers you can skip. Again, go to Still Dead. You'll find that whole list there, and you can watch through it. But back to this episode and Spike now. I like the way that he let Robin live and then says, but I won't do it again. Like, next time I will kill him. He so much as looks at me funny. I will kill him. And I also like the fact that this episode is walking us through trauma triggers and resolving them. Like, he processes this whole thing. Now, it's not that simple or quick in real life, but what's great about fiction is that it distills experience down to something you can absorb in one story and then come back to it again and again and again to process your healing. That's one of the awesome things about story. And again, as I always say, fiction is not answerable to reality. It is answerable to truth. And this is the truth of it. It's not that short and quick, but processing your trauma, they have you go back and tell your story again until you understand it, until you can process it. And that is part of the therapeutic process. So while we say like these men aren't having therapy, they're kind of having therapy.
Well, yeah, they kind of are. And it's funny, as much as it's an episode about dudes who need therapy, it's also like an episode about how dudes do therapy. Because, you know, Giles with the exposition, talking about the stone, he says stone's just a catalyst. The rest is up to Spike. And I'm like, oh, okay, so they are doing therapy.
There you
like,
go.
you know, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but the light bulb really has to want to change, you know? Spike has to, like, the rest is up to Spike. Spike has to get there.
And he did. He took Robin Wood punching him in the face repeatedly to do it, but it got him there, you know?
Extremely Fight Club. So Fight Club.
So very Fight Club. So very Fight Club.
God. Yeah. I love this episode for teaching me how to be a man. That's what I love about this episode, I think.
Well, something else I absolutely love in this episode, which we get for just a brief glimpse, but oh my God, it is so amazing. God bless Juliet Landau. Drew has done a lot of delightful things through the run of Buffy and Angel, but I think the understated gorgeousness of "you want to bring your mum with us" might be my favorite. That might be my absolute favorite. That and the little chuckle.
The laugh. The subtitles call it a chuckle. But I'm like, no. It's this. I can't. I mean, I tried to do it at the top of the show. I can't. It's so good. It's so good. I want to know. This is another one of those moments where I want to know what was on the page in the script, because whatever it said, whether it had her laugh there or not. Oh my God.
Whether it did or not, the way she did it was freaking genius. Juliet Landau is a treasure. Every minute that she plays Drew is so layered in so many different things. She just does an amazing job.
And the Drew and Spike makeout choreography on the show is as good, if not better, than the fight choreography. Yeah. And I will stand by that opinion.
It is fantastic. I also I like Buffy here. We have Buffy too at the end. The mission is what matters, right? So we're coming back around to that. Now, Buffy is not a mother, but she has Dawn, you know, as her younger sister, as the child that she is responsible for raising. So there is kind of a mother, you know, reflection there. And we have this conversation with her and Giles while Giles is distracting her, where he says, if you were faced with the same choice that you were faced with Glory, you would let Dawn die. And she says, yeah, to save the world, I would let Dawn die. I wonder if that's true. Is it because she knows, after having been dead for, you know, now a significant period of time? The first time she died, it was just for a couple of minutes, right? But now that she's been dead for a while and knows that it's better than here, she wouldn't be as hesitant to let Dawn die. I don't know that I believe that. Do you believe that? Does that make sense to you?
In the moment, I believe it. I don't know if in the moment, I believe her.
Yeah.
When she says that. And I believe that she believes it. I think faced with the situation, it might be a different story, but I do think that Buffy has come around on some of us are going to die. And I think part of what's going on in all of her speeches is she is trying to make peace with that. Because, as you say, Buffy's all about protection. Well, she's now in a situation where she cannot protect everybody.
Yeah.
She really cannot. It is not possible. So part of her struggle, where she needs to go to therapy, is that you really can't save every single person around you. And she's coming to terms with that, I think, in a real way.
Yeah. You just have to save the most people, right?
Yeah. You can't make a difference for everyone, but the difference that you make for the people who survive matters.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like that's kind of where she's headed. But I don't know. I don't know if in the same situation she would let Dawn die.
I don't know. I don't. Maybe. I don't know. Like, it seems weird. And I guess, like, she has changed. She's been through a lot. Dawn also is older and not as young and innocent and whatever. Although she's still, she's 17, maybe now 16, something like that. So I don't know. It doesn't ring right to me. None of this stuff with Giles and Buffy works for me. And the thing is that, like, I do love the idea of the conflict between them. I love the philosophical conflict. I don't like that he is distracting her while Robin kills Spike behind her back. That is a betrayal. It is one thing for him to sit down with her and be like, hey, Spike is a danger. Here are all the reasons why. And to have that, like, that conflict of philosophy in approaching this, and her being like, hey, eventually you're going to have to learn to trust me. If I tell you this is what I need, then this is what I need, So I like that. But the way that they do it, with Giles betraying her, with him in cahoots with Robin, who is killing for vengeance, which is something that if anybody came to Giles at any other point in the series and says, hey, I would like to vengeance murder somebody, Giles would sit them down and be like, hey, there's a splashback to vengeance. Here's the stuff. He would be looking out for the person coming to him, for what is best for them. And I don't think that Giles has ever been the kind of person to be like, yeah, that vengeance murder is absolutely A-okay. Like, I don't think that's who Giles is. So we've got this Giles that is basically becoming a conflict vending machine. Now that Joyce is dead, we need another one. So we've made Giles into that. And I don't care for it. I don't like it. I like him and Buffy fighting. I like them having a different philosophical outlook on it. But I think that his behavior and his choices here are inconsistent with the Giles that I fell in love with a long time ago.
Well, he definitely reads as kind of a sinister, bad teacher kind of a guy now in this, like, I tried to talk to her about this because Giles has expressed concern about taking, removing Spike's chip and this choice that Buffy made, and, letting Spike,
I like his concern,
hang around. And I like the concern, and I like that he does raise those questions, but then he decides, it's almost like he decides on his own that, well, she's never going to listen to reason on this, so I need to go behind her back. And I don't know that he's supporting Robin's vengeance killing so much as Giles wants Spike out of the picture. And it's like, okay, here's somebody else. Here is another man who agrees with me. Let's do that.
Let us be men and murder people.
It does. It feels to me as though in this like very sinister professor sort of way, Giles has made up his mind about Buffy and has decided that Buffy doesn't know what she's talking about, or that she hasn't carefully considered everything that she's doing, and just decides, well, I'm going to make the decision for her, rather than acknowledging the decision that she's made,
rather than speaking his mind,
than acknowledging it. Yeah, rather than acknowledging it and considering that, oh, maybe she has fantastically good reasons for making the decisions that she's making.
Showing
at this
her that
point.
respect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he defaults to, it's like, I'm not your watcher anymore, but actually I still am. And I'm going to tell you what to do.
Right. I also really super hate the way that he talks to her when he's distracting her. So like, it's bad enough that he is, betraying her and lying to her in this moment. But then he starts playing these, mind games. Your life is chaos. It's a mess. You can't even run your own life. You think you can make these decisions, little girl? Like that kind of shit is, like from the abuser's playbook. Like that is what abusers do so that you question yourself and you don't focus on them. And seeing Giles do that to Buffy, just it hit me really hard. I just absolutely was devastated by Giles doing that. That bugged me. This whole thing bugged me a lot. It felt like a huge betrayal of who Giles is. Completely inconsistent with a character. And you can have this conflict and be genuine, but they were just ramping it up. They were playing this for the conflict's sake, not for the characters, not for what actually made sense. And I don't like any of that.
Yeah, and he is willing to jeopardize his relationship with Buffy to get Spike killed.
Yeah.
Like that's weird too. Because even if he's saying these things, to distract her, it's still a manipulation.
Yeah.
He could be, if he's putting this on as a way of, keeping her away from Robin and Spike, it's still like, that's still shitty. Whether he believes this or not.
All the way around.
It sucks. So Spike's death is more important to Giles than Giles's relationship with Buffy. That's fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
No.
It's bad.
Sucks.
It's terrible. I hate it. Tell me your thoughts on the title here. I hadn't really thought about this, but I think you have some interesting things to say.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I have questions about the title.
Yeah.
I would be curious to know if it's a reference to James W. Lowen's 1995 book, Lies My Teacher Told Me. I would believe that it might be, considering how much discussion we get of learning and knowledge and where it comes from in this episode, especially from Giles.
Yep.
So Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong, critically examines 12 popular American history textbooks and concludes that what they're calling history is really Eurocentric white supremacist mythology.
Yeah.
Surprise!
Hey, and
this
hats
was 1995.
Hats off to
Like,
Lowen for being ahead of his time on that one. Yeah.
I would love for that to feel dated. Like I would love for something like that to feel dated. The fact that does not, that we're
this is still new, a new idea. Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Surprise, everybody.
Yeah.
But Giles, so we have Giles like railing against the new library being more computers than books.
Yeah.
And he says, knowledge comes from crafted bindings and pages, Buffy, not ones and zeros. Interesting, right? Because we know that books aren't problematic or biased ever.
Right. And that the form in which the knowledge is delivered is significant to the knowledge, right?
Yeah. Because, it's not like knowledge comes from lots of places. And God damn it, I should have pulled Dr. Kelly Jones in on this one. Because
I know, how great would that be?
Literally her field of expertise.
Yes.
And then Giles's excuse for taking Buffy out to train in the midst of everything. Adept as you are as a slayer, there are always new things to learn, which, okay, whatever. But after this whole thing about like where the knowledge comes from, so the knowledge comes from Giles ostensibly in this situation.
Let me see. Is the white British man trying to control the access to knowledge and understanding for everybody else? Is that a thing that's happening here?
Yeah. That's a weird thing. I don't know.
Feels a little familiar. I'm just saying.
Wild. It's very much, Giles trying to control the knowledge, control the narrative, and not just control it, but say what counts as knowledge and learning.
Yep.
is really interesting.
Yeah.
Real interesting. And ultimately, Buffy concludes, I think you've taught me everything I need to know, and literally closes the door on that student-teacher relationship at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So maybe this is lies my teacher told me?
Well, yeah, except Giles has always been a father figure for her. We've had them actually textually acknowledge. Remember Something Blue? She's like, my own father is a loser. I want you to walk me down the aisle. So there is a very real father-daughter. I am prouder of you than any father could be. We've had that kind of thing between Giles and Buffy before. So when we talk about lies my parents told me, we are talking about all of the lies, including Giles and Buffy.
Yeah. And I mean, regardless of where the title comes from or like what it might have been inspired by, it is interesting considering the relationships we actually see on screen and hear discussed, right? It's biological fathers are entirely missing from the conversation.
Yes.
None of the central characters, Spike, Robin, and Buffy, has parents, plural.
Right.
We have 3 dead mothers, 3 absent fathers, and 1 you're not the watcher of me work dad. And then Robin tells Giles, I was raised by a watcher, which again, like, where's that whole story?
Exactly.
That kid had an interesting childhood.
Dude?
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Where's that dude? So Buffy and Robin both have these work dads who are, father figures, parent figures, but also watchers with this very specific role. I mean, I like that Giles knows the names and the history of the Slayers and their watchers. Yeah. There's something here about the Watchers Council as a parent figure too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not new to this episode, but it's definitely kind of floating in the subtext there of the title. But I think it's interesting that it's parents, plural, when the individual folks whose parent relationships we're looking at have parent singular.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know what to do with that other than
just
the title is catchy.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes
that's a thing.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you get. It's just like, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that. All right, Noelle. So lies my parents told me. What's your favorite part?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we've talked about this. I love Nikki Wood like crazy. I have complicated feelings about the fact that she's double cast.
Yeah.
But I kind of is okay
because it's a different actor playing her in Fool for Love as opposed to this episode.
Yes, yeah. In Fool for Love, April Whedon, no relationship to Joss Whedon,
different
spelled
name,
differently,
different spelling,
but it's April Whedon plays Nikki in Fool for Love, and Katie Albert plays her in First Date, and here in Lies My Parents Told Me. And on the one hand, there's always something about recasting a role that feels kind of shitty to me.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I kind of love the idea that the woman who talks to her son is literally a different person from the woman who fights vampires, right? That's a complexity that this episode tries to, I think, demonize.
Yeah.
And it's one we don't often get to see in people, and especially mothers.
Yeah.
I think many of us experience ourselves as different people at different times in our lives, or even different people at different times in our days, depending on what our role is in any given situation. So, I'm always here to make a meaning mountain out of a production molehill, but like,
I like it.
Nikki Wood, Nikki Wood in this episode, Nikki Wood just as a character. I mean, I don't know if that can count as a favorite part, but I don't know. I also love Spike saying, I killed a lot of people's mothers.
Yeah.
To Wood, because of course he's talking about his own mother as well. He killed his own mother. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I love it. I love this episode. Yeah. But for me, I think it's the fight with Robin and Spike. I love the choreography of it. I love the way we have these two men working through their very complicated mommy issues, together. And of course, like, but maybe it needs to be Robin Wood's, like, old iMac. I don't know. It's all of these things together. There's all of these things together. I love all of it.
love that the computer is practically a character in that scene.
For me, yes.
Yeah, well, like the meaningful close-ups on the click of the mouse. I mean, come on. Come on.
And iTunes.
Yeah.
That it has iTunes. The idea that iTunes exists in my world and in Buffy the Vampire Slayer just cracks me up. I just love it. I love it.
All right. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, follow at Chipperish on Twitter and use the hashtag StillPretty. Or as a Patreon supporter at any level, you can join the Chipperish Discord group and chat live with other listeners and the host.
Hey, did you know we have a new podcast from Chipperish Media? It is called Endless, and it covers the Sandman comics and eventually, when it comes out, the TV show, hosted by me and DC Comics editor Elisa Whitney. Search for Endless Sandman in your podcast app of choice. Also, Patreon supporters who chip in at $10 and up get to attend show recordings live with chats before and after the show. So if you haven't pledged your support yet, now's the time.
Speaking of supporters, this episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to Abby, Alice, Christina, Erica, Jonathan, Kevin, Kristen, Michael, Rose, Sarah, Shelley, Stephania, and Stephanie. And this week's special message for our power producers: love the code.
While you're waiting for the next episode of Still Pretty, here are some things you can do. Write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or give him a pass, let him live, on account of the fact that you killed his mother. We will be back next time with Dirty Girls, the 18th episode of Season 7. Until then, Spike's got some sort of get-out-of-jail-free card that doesn't apply to the rest of us. I mean, he could slaughter 100 frat boys, and forgiveness makes us human. Blah, 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 blah.